Hey, Level 1 candidates, welcome back to FinQuiz. All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're not jumping into a formula. We're not opening a big reading. We're not doing a giant calculation with 5 moving parts and a calculator that suddenly decides to act weird in the exam hall. Today, we're talking about something much simpler, but honestly, very dangerous. We're talking about reading the question correctly. And I know that sounds too basic, right? You might be thinking, come on, I know how to read. Of course you do. But under CFA exam pressure, when the clock is moving, your brain is tired, and you see a topic you recognize, something funny happens. You don't always read the actual question. You read the question you expected to see. And that is where marks disappear. So on screen, we have the FinQuiz CFA Question-Reading Checklist. The main idea is simple. Avoid answering the wrong question under exam pressure. The document reminds candidates that avoidable errors often come from misreading the question, not from lack of knowledge. Now let's zoom in. At the top, you see the phrase, read precisely, answer exactly. That's the whole game. Not answer what sounds familiar, not answer what you studied last night, not answer the choice that feels CFA-ish. Read precisely, answer exactly. Because in the CFA exam, there may be 3 answer choices, and sometimes one choice is absolutely true in general, but completely wrong for this question. That hurts, right? You look at the solution afterward and say, oh man, I knew that. Yes, you knew the concept. But the exam did not ask for the concept in general. It asked for one specific thing, under one specific condition for one specific time period. That's what this checklist is training you to catch. Now let's go point by point. Let's zoom into the first point. What is the command word? This means you need to identify whether the question is asking you to calculate, identify, infer, recommend, support, weaken, determine, or select. This matters because different command words require different thinking. Suppose a question says, which of the following most likely supports the analyst's conclusion? That is not the same as asking which statement is true. A statement can be true and still not support the conclusion. Like, let's say an analyst says a company's profit margin will improve next year, then a statement about lower supplier costs supports that conclusion. A statement that the industry is competitive may also be true, but it does not support margin improvement in the same direct way. So before you start solving, pause for half a second and ask, what job has the question given me? That little pause can save you from going in the wrong direction. This sounds small, but it's huge. Let me make this more concrete so that it sticks. So suppose an analyst says, Company A's profit margin will likely improve next year. Now the question asks, which of the following would most likely support the analyst's conclusion? Now, if choice A says that Company A's revenue declined last year, and choice B says Company A recently renegotiated supplier contracts at lower input costs. And let's say choice C is Company A's industry is highly competitive. Now, all 3 may be relevant business facts, but the command word is support. We need the one that strengthens the conclusion that margins will improve. That's choice B. Lower input costs can improve margins. So notice, we did not ask which statement is interesting. We did not ask which statement sounds finance related. We asked which one supports. In the exam, your first job is not to solve. Your first job is to understand what job the question gave you. Tiny point, big difference. Now the second point is one of the most dangerous ones. Is the question positive or negative? This is where words like least likely except does not, or false and incorrect become extremely important. And let's be honest, almost every CFA candidate has made this mistake at some point. You read a question quickly, you recognize the topic, and your brain jumps to the correct concept. But the question asked for the exception. It asked for the least likely answer. It asked for the incorrect statement. So the whole direction of the question is reversed. For example, imagine a question asks, which of the following is least likely a benefit of diversification? You see diversification and your mind immediately goes to lower unsystematic risk, reduced company-specific exposure, better portfolio stability. Fine. But if the answer choice says elimination of systematic risk, that is likely the correct answer because diversification does not eliminate systematic risk. This is painful because you may know the concept perfectly. You did not fail because you were weak in portfolio management. You failed because you missed the phrase least likely. That is why when you see a negative word, mentally circle it. Tell yourself, okay, they flipped the question. Do not let your brain run on autopilot. So, this is where the CFA exam loves to catch tired candidate, and this is where candidates lose very easy marks. So when you see words like not, except, or incorrect, slow down. Circle it mentally. Say to yourself, okay, they flipped it. That 1 second can save you a point. Now zoom to the third point. What exact item must be selected? Before looking at the choices, ask yourself, what am I supposed to choose? This is such a good habit because answer choices are designed to pull your attention. Sometimes the choices are so familiar that they start leading your brain before you have fully understood the question. Let's say the question asks, which ratio is most appropriate for evaluating a company's short-term liquidity? Before looking at the choices, answer the task in your mind. Okay, short-term liquidity. I'm looking for something like current ratio, quick ratio, cash ratio. Now choices appear. A, return on equity. B, current ratio. C, debt to equity ratio. Easy. B, but suppose you rushed and saw debt to equity and thought, oh yes, capital structure, solvency, risk. That is finance related, but not the exact item. The question is not asking for long-term solvency. It is asking for short-term liquidity. So, folks, remember, this is important because answer choices can pull you away from the actual task. They are not random. They are designed to be tempting, right? So, let me repeat this point. Our question asks for a liquidity ratio. Your mind should already be thinking current ratio, quick ratio, or cash ratio. And if you see debt to equity, don't get distracted just because it sounds financial. Debt to equity may be useful for solvency analysis, but it is not the exact item being asked. So before you read the choices, pause and define the target. What am I choosing? That makes the answer choices less distracting. Now let's move to point 4. Are there conditions or limits? This means you need to pay attention to words like only, if, unless, before, after, or greater than, less than, during, and based on, etc., etc. These little words are like small road signs. Ignore them and boom, wrong road. Let's use an example from time value of money. Suppose the question says, if interest rates increase, what is most likely to happen to the price of an existing fixed rate bond, assuming all else equal? That phrase, assuming all else equal, matters. We are not talking about credit quality changing. We are not talking about liquidity changing. We are not talking about the issuer becoming stronger, just interest rates. So the price of the fixed rate bond should fall. Now suppose the question says, based only on the information provided. That means you cannot bring in your own assumptions. In real life, you might say, well, maybe management is strong. Maybe the economy is improving. Maybe the company has brand power. No, no, no. The exam does not care about your imagination. The exam says based only on the information provided. That means stay inside the fence. Do not jump over the fence and start creating your own story. Because folks, the CFA exam usually does not want your imagination. It wants your discipline. Now zoom in to point number 5. What time period applies? And this is another classic exam trap. This is very important in level 1. Are we talking about the current period, prior period, next period, beginning balance, ending balance, before tax amount, after tax amount, pre-event, or post-event? This one is everywhere in level 1. If a question asks for average inventory and you use only ending inventory, your calculation may still produce one of the answer choices. That is the scary part. Wrong methods often lead to clean-looking answer choices. They do not look wrong. They sit there confidently, smiling at you, saying, "Pick me." And if you were moving too fast, you might. Same thing with before tax and after tax cost of debt. If the question asks for after-tax cost of debt and the before-tax cost is 8% with a tax rate of 30%, the answer is not 8%. It is 8% multiplied by 1 minus 30%, which gives 5.6%. If you select 8%, your finance knowledge was not the problem. The problem was reading the full wording. And those mistakes hurt because after reviewing the answer, you say, "Oh, I knew that." Yes, you did. But the exam only gives credit for the answer you selected, not the answer you would have selected if you had slowed down. And honestly, those are the most annoying mistakes because you knew the concept. So whenever you see time words or tax words, slow down. Beginning or ending, before tax or after tax, current year or next year, pre-event or post-event. The CFA exam loves precision. Now, point 6 is very practical. This is one of my favorites. Is every number actually relevant? This is such a common level 1 issue. When candidates see numbers in the question, they feel pressure to use all of them. But CFA questions often include extra information. Not every number belongs in the calculation. It's almost like the exam hands you 5 ingredients and you think, well, I guess all of this has to go into the soup. No, sometimes one of those ingredients does not belong. Suppose the question gives you next year's dividend, required return, dividend growth rate, and book value per share. Then it asks for value using the Gordon growth model. The model needs next dividend, required return, and growth rate. Book value is not needed. It may look important because it is a number, but it does not belong in that formula. So the rule is simple. Identify the concept first, then decide which numbers matter. Do not let extra numbers bully you into using them because, numbers are not automatically relevant just because they are in the question. Now, the next point is very human. Am I reacting to a familiar term? This is where your memory can actually work against you. You see a familiar phrase and your brain immediately jumps to a standard fact. This point simply says that a familiar phrase can trigger an automatic answer. Confirm how the term is being used in this specific question. This is such a human thing. You see duration and your brain says interest rate sensitivity. You see correlation and your brain says diversification. You see FIFO and your brain says higher ending inventory during inflation. That may be correct in many contexts, but still, you must check what the question is actually asking. For example, during inflation compared with LIFO, FIFO usually results in higher ending inventory and higher net income. Fine, but what if the question asks, under inflation, which inventory method most likely results in lower taxable income? Now, the familiar FIFO fact may jump into your brain, but lower taxable income under inflation usually comes from LIFO because recent higher costs flow into cost of goods sold, reducing reported income. So the familiar term is not enough. You must ask, how is this term being used here? So this is where candidates need to move from memorization to exam judgment. The exam is not just asking, have you heard this term before? It is asking, can you use it correctly in this setting? The exam is not rewarding recognition alone. It is rewarding controlled thinking. Now, this is a big one. This is one of the most important points in the whole checklist. Is one choice true but off target? This is a big CFA exam trap. An answer choice can be factually correct and still be wrong because it does not answer the question asked. This happens all the time. Let's say the question asks, which factor best explains why return on equity increased? One choice says the company has a strong brand. That may be true. Another says the industry is growing. That may also be true. But if the question gives data showing that the company's net profit margin increased, then the answer that directly explains higher ROE is the increase in net profit margin. In the exam, do not ask only, is this statement true? Ask, does this statement answer the exact question? That is a more disciplined way to think. Now, point 9, did I read all answer choices? Now, this point reminds you to read all answer choices. And again, this sounds obvious, but under time pressure, candidates sometimes grab the first decent answer and move on. That is risky, especially when the question asks for the best, most likely or least likely answer. Sometimes choice A is partly correct, but choice C is better. Sometimes one answer is true in a general sense, while another answer fits the question more precisely. The CFA exam often tests relative judgment, not just basic recognition. So read all 3 choices. You do not have to spend forever, but give each option a fair look. For example, a question says, which action would most likely improve a company's current ratio? A, paying off accounts payable with cash. B, issuing long-term debt for cash. C, purchasing inventory with cash. Now let's think. Paying off accounts payable with cash reduces current assets and current liabilities. Depending on the starting ratio, it may increase or decrease the current ratio, not always straightforward. Issuing long-term debt for cash increases current assets while increasing long-term liabilities, not current liabilities. That usually improves the current ratio. Purchasing inventory with cash just changes one current asset into another. Cash down, inventory up, current assets total stays the same. So B is best. But if you read only A and think paying liabilities sounds good, you may jump too soon. Read all choices. The first answer that sounds good is not always the best answer. Then we come to elimination. Can I eliminate choices for a reason? This is how stronger candidates think. They do not just say, I like B. They say A is wrong because it uses the wrong period. C is wrong because it reverses the relationship. B fits the condition. That is a much calmer way to answer questions. For example, if a bond's yield decreases, its price increases, assuming no change in credit risk. So if one answer says the price decreases because investors require a lower return, that reverses the logic. If another answer says price is unchanged because coupon payments are fixed, that ignores the discount rate. The correct answer is the one that connects lower yield with higher price. When you eliminate choices for a clear reason, you are not guessing. You are controlling the question. So guys, notice the reasoning. Why? Because you are eliminating for a reason. That is how you stay calm in the exam. Now, point 11 says, Does my answer fit the full wording? That means the correct answer must fit the command word, the qualifier, the condition, the scope, and any restriction in the question. That sounds technical, but in normal language, it means that before selecting the answer, ask yourself, does this answer fit everything the question asked? Not half of it, not the general topic, the whole thing. For example, if the question asks about interest paid under US GAAP and its effect on cash flow from operations, your answer must fit US GAAP, interest paid, and operating cash flow. You cannot answer based on IFRS flexibility if the question clearly says US GAAP. You cannot answer based on financing cash flow if the question asks about operating cash flow. The correct answer has to stay within the boundaries of the question. Full wording matters. The exam is full of little boundaries, folks. Now let's zoom to the final point. Am I rushing because it looks easy? This one is painfully real. Folks, easy-looking questions often invite shortcuts. Take 1 extra second to confirm the wording before committing. And yes, this happens. The question looks easy, and that is exactly why you make the mistake. Because your guard drops. You think, oh, I know this. Click next. Then later, when reviewing, you say, wait, it said least likely? Yes, it did. The question did not trick you with advanced math. It tricked you with confidence. So when a question looks easy, do not panic, but also do not get too casual. Take 1 extra second. Ask, what is the command word? Is it positive or negative? What exactly am I selecting? Does my answer fit the whole sentence? That 1 second is not a waste. It is insurance. Think of it like driving. You can drive fast on the highway, but you still check the mirrors. You still read the signs. You still stay in your lane. Same with CFA questions. Move efficiently, but don't drive blind. Now let's look at the final check at the bottom of the document. Am I answering the exact question asked, not the question I expected? That is really the heart of this checklist, because in the CFA exam, your brain wants to move fast. That is natural. You have studied so much, you recognize topics quickly, and you want to keep momentum. But the real skill is controlled speed. You want to move efficiently without becoming careless. So here is how I would recommend using this checklist. Keep it beside you while practicing questions. Use it during mock exams. And most importantly, use it when reviewing wrong answers. Every time you get a question wrong, ask yourself, was this a knowledge mistake or was this a reading mistake? Those are not the same thing. If you did not know the formula, fine, go back to the notes. If you did not understand the concept, review the reading. But if you missed least likely, used the wrong time period, selected a true but off-target answer, or used an irrelevant number, then your problem is not knowledge. Your problem is exam execution. And that is actually good news because execution mistakes can be reduced with practice. You do not need to relearn the entire curriculum to fix them. You need a better process. That is how you want to train. So don't just read this checklist once and say, nice. Use it actively. When you solve practice questions, especially from the FinQuiz question bank or mock exams, keep this checklist beside you. This checklist is not here to make you nervous. It is here to make you sharper. Because CFA Level 1 is not only a test of knowledge, it is also a test of discipline. You have to know the content, yes, but you also have to read like a professional, not like a tired student rushing through a worksheet at midnight. So, guys, download this free FinQuiz CFA Question-Reading Checklist from the link in the description. Keep it beside you while solving practice questions and mock exams. So here's what I want you to do after this video. Go to finquiz.com/mistakes and take the free quiz. It has 20 short questions. No CFA technical knowledge required, and you get your result immediately. It is quick, but it tells you something useful about your exam behavior. Not your intelligence, not your worth as a candidate, just your reading discipline under pressure. Think of it as a small reality check before your next mock exam. And look, CFA candidates work too hard to throw away marks. You already have enough pressure with formulas, readings, ethics, financial statements, fixed income, portfolio management, the whole buffet. So don't lose points because one word in the question slipped past you. Go to finquiz.com/mistakes, take the free quiz, download the free checklist, and use it in your next practice session. Think of it like a quick safety check before takeoff. It won't replace studying, of course, but it can help you stop giving away marks you already know how to earn. Folks, passing the exam is not only about knowing more. Sometimes it is about making fewer avoidable mistakes than the candidate sitting next to you. All right, keep practicing, stay sharp, and remember, in the CFA exam, it's not enough to know the topic. You have to answer the exact question in front of you. That is where a lot of CFA points are won. And that, my friend, can make all the difference. Good luck. Stay calm, read carefully, and give yourself the best chance to pass.